Nelson, who's going to tell us about plastics in the geologic record, and Lewis will introduce.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce you, Dr. Rangel Buitrago. He is a full professor of geology at the University of Atlantico in Barranquilla, Colombia. His research investigates various modern challenges in the fields of geology and coastal environments, from the anthropic transformations of our coastlines to the effects of particle pollution on our coastal waters, and even the increasing prevalence of encounters with snakes at our beaches. He has edited and authored more than 20 books, serves as associate editor and editorial board member in 3 environmental science journals, and has served as an environmental consultant for international and national organizations. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Rangel Buitrago.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for this invitation. I'm really honored to be here, speak about my research investigation, and the idea is for the next hour, try to tell a little bit about our work in Colombia, specifically in the Caribbean coastline of Colombia. First of all, apologize because I'm not English native speaker. It's my first talk in English with a big audience like this. No, it's not the same like a conference, but I think we can understand during this process, okay? What is the idea here? The idea is to show you all the work that we are doing in our university for the last year, right? And the idea here is try to show how this journey begins and what we have at this moment. That is something new, I think, for the science. The idea is to show the beginning, what happened when you start to study the scenery, the coastal scenery, and then you find a big problem with the plastics. We speak about the plastic problem that we have in Colombia, everywhere. And we speak about a new definition, what we bring the update plastic cycle. And then we can start to speak about the big problem that we have, because all the cycle of plastic is really a mess. But the problem that you have when you discard and dispose of the plastic, you can get new formation, in this case, new rock that you found. And then we try to explain with this new lexicon that we have. And we finish with some management consideration, right? And how to begin this situation, right? Years ago, we started with the Professor Alan Williams to do this work about the coastal scenery. This is a methodology to try to give a qualification to a coastal site based in some parameters, human parameters and physical parameters, right? We try to go to a coastal site and see what is the cliff characteristics, how is the beach face, the rocky shore, etc., etc. But the most important here is try to know what happened with the human influence in this area. We have this rating for each of coastal site that we visit, and we divide the coastal site between class 1, a really nice place in the world, and class 5, a place with a lot of human intervention, etc., right? And we get this for the Caribbean coastline of Colombia, right? Unfortunately, in the Caribbean coastline of Colombia, the bad sites of the class 3, 4, and 5 are the common denominator, right? And the question is why, if you have a really nice place, because the Caribbean coastline of Colombia is a really nice place, they get this really bad qualification, right? And we start to study what happened. We start to study with the problem of erosion. Yes, of course, we have a big erosion problem in this area. And also we have a problem with how we are managing the coastal erosion, because in Colombia, specifically in the Caribbean coastline, we love the rocks. And all the solution for the coastal erosion process is a hard structure, right? And this is really bad for the scenery, because a beach without growing is not a beautiful beach, of course. Also, we have a big issue with the coastal urbanization. We have a really big problem with this, because the people is make houses, building in really bad place to construct. Also, we have problem with the sewage, with noise, and with litter. Maybe this is the most important problem we have in this moment, because you can find litter in everywhere, right? Okay, You know, in this moment we have a problem with litter. What happened now? Yes. Then we started to working with the litter issue because it's a big problem that needs solution. Something important here, we need to differentiate between pollution and contamination because they look similar, but they are not the same, right? You have here the definition, right? And the most of the people believe the problem with plastic is a contamination problem. But in this moment, plastic is inside all the biological cycles. In this sense, it's a real pollution problem. This is very important to understand that because some people believe that, okay, if you clean the beach is okay, right? But for example, in Colombia, in some cases, it's very frustrating because the people make, okay, let's go to clean the beach. Go to the beach in the morning and in the afternoon is equal. No problem, because we have really big amounts of plastic and litter, and you can clean every day, but we have the same problem. This is a key point to understand. We are generating more litter of plastic that we have the capacity to manage. That is a big problem here, because we try to apply different solutions, but the generation of plastic is really elevated, and we cannot cope with this problem, right? And we started to understand what happened in the Caribbean coastline. We did this kind of paper in order to know what is the relation between the scenery and the litter. We using this methodology approach that you can see the upper part, the right side. We try to see fast counting about what happened with the most important litter items that you have. And fortunately, we have the really bad classification, and the litter is a big issue, right? Then we started to quantify what happened in a specific place of the Caribbean coastline. As we live in here in Barranquilla, I live in here in this area, right? This is our study area in this moment. Most of my work in Colombia is focused in this area. And we create a monitoring survey area. And these are points that every month we try to visit and know what's happening in this area. And for litter, we did this kind of survey in order to count how many liters you can find in every place, right? Because the idea is to compare and know what happened with litter and plastic in every place, right? We have a big problem because if you can see here, we have a big river. This is the Magdalena River, and it's the most important river of Colombia, right? This river crosses all the country, right? And most of the municipalities don't have a really good garbage and waste management. In this sense, all the waste go to the river, and the river floats until the Caribbean coastline, and then move along the area, right? And this is a big problem, right? And the other is the driftwood, because we are in a tropical area, we have a lot of trees, and when these trees that go to the basin and move along the dry basin and are accumulated along the beach. And in this moment, that is the work that I am doing in this moment, is trying to find the relationship between the driftwood and plastic, because the driftwood is trapping plastic, right? In normal condition, that is not a problem, right? But when you have litter and you have plastic and you have driftwood, that can be a real problem, right? Okay, then this is the first idea that we have. I like to tell to the people, if you go to the beach in this area and put a towel, right? The towel have maybe 2 meters long. You can find at least, I don't know, 6-7 pieces of driftwood and litter. And this is the average that you have. In some place, you can find 7 per meter. In other, you can find less of 1, but in some places, or all the places, you can find woody debris, driftwood, and anthropogenic litter, right? What kind of litter do you find? This is the first one. Vegetation debris is for one side, and then you have plastic, polyester, rubber, glass, metal, etc. Important, this is the overall panorama. Only thing about the refuse, the correct term here is the refuse, all that you can find on the beach, right? This is the fear assessment. What happened here, you have vegetation debris and the other kind of litters, or plastic principally. And what happened here, what do you find? It's very common to find plastic. It's the most common item that you have in the beach, and these other ones, right? And what happen now? More with the debris, more litter, we have a problem to solve in order that. Really? Okay. Then we start to study what happened with the plastic, right? Because it's the most important item that you find, it's the more quantity, the more percentage about this. As you know, the plastic was invented with the idea to help humanity, right? But in some point, like I said before, it's a lot of plastic, and when you have a lot of plastic and you cannot manage, this have be a big problem. Is a synthetic polymer to set together many parts is necessary and useful. Unfortunately, during the COVID pandemic, we used this, and this was a very typical situation during COVID. Despite the people don't go to the beach, you can find face masks on the beach because the people throw away, and they arrive to the beach. It's like the face mask has a lot of fibers, microplastic, and this is really hard to handle, right? And the problem with that is 1 ton of plastic needs a lot of, it's necessary to create a lot of bottles and bags. It's necessary to do that, and it's very, very complicated to leave to or stop the use of plastic because it's very necessary with all these characteristics they have, okay? Some properties. It's thermoplastic, it's thermoset. And this is a very important message. You can recycle the plastic indefinitely because some people believe, okay, we have plastic. If we have the opportunity to recycle, we can do more and more, yeah? And that is the problem. The plastic only can be recycled maybe 2-3 times. And this depends of the place, of the country. It's not the same if you try to recycle here in the US because you maybe have the infrastructure than Colombia because we don't have that, right? And maybe the recycling process is more complicated in countries like us, right? For example, when I ask to my neighbors, you recycle? They say, yes, I recycle. How? Tell me. No, I put the plastic in one can, I put the glass in other can, and I put the can in other can. Okay, and then, no, I put this in the street, the car take all, and I don't know what happened. I assume they recycling. No, all go to the same place, and you lose all the work that you did. I don't know what happened here, but this is very common in Colombia, right? And most of the people believe they are recycling, but this is not true, right? Right? For recycling, you need very good infrastructure, you need a little bit of environmental education, you need a lot of stuff. It's not an easy thing. And this is very important because most of the people believe they are recycling, right? And then you have this, the downcycling process that is the most common, right? When you recycle, you turn this plastic into something worse, and then you have a big issue in that situation, right? And the plastic, what happened with the plastic? They can convert in different size, nanoplastic, microplastic, mesoplastic, and macroplastic. Each one have the ability to impact every part of the trophic cycle. And it's a big issue because you have nanoplastic that are inside the bacteria, they are in the plankton, then the plankton is using for the fish, you take the fish, eat the fish, and you have plastic in your stomach. It's very, very, very common in this moment, right? This is the overview of the situation. Now, and we have to understand or try to explain what happened with the plastic, because they, in theory, have a cycle, in theory, right? But the cycle is not that perfect like they sounds, right? Cycles are very common in science. We have the rock cycles, the oxygen cycle, the water cycle, etc., etc. And he tried to explain how a situation happens in a circular way, right? And have some stage in order to understand the process, right? This is the ideal plastic cycles. You extract the material, make the design, distribute the plastic, use, disposal, and then start to repeat the cycle, right? But this is not the real plastic cycles. This is a very, very ideal scenario, right? This is a better scenario of the plastic. The real scenario is this one. You extract the plastic, you do the plastic, or extract the oil, produce the plastic, use the plastic, and then throw away the plastic. And where is the plastic now? Maybe in the street, in the landfill, burning, etc. and etc. In our country, or in some countries, they finish on the beach in this way, or forming a rocks, right? We speak about this in some minutes. Or when you have a heavy rain, you have this. That is very common because you have the driftwood, right, for the rivers, and the plastic accumulate on moving offshore because it's very common, right? I like to explain the new plastic cycle with a bottle because most of the people believe that the plastic is a problem during the disposal and when you finish the bottle or you consume this. But each part of the plastic cycle have a big problem. Each part is very important. The plastic in all the cycle is a big problem. When you extract the plastics, you need oil, right? And it's very funny in the case of Colombia, and funny is being ironic because we speak about, okay, we don't need more cars. Less cars because less cars is less oil, but you never speak about plastic. And most of the oil go to plastic. It's necessary to create or produce plastics, right? Almost all the plastic is produced based on fossil fuel materials, right? And in this case, you have a very polluted material during the extraction, right? And the biomass plastic is just 1%. Nothing. It's nothing for a big industry. In that sense, in the time that you need plastic, you need oil, and you have a big problem. Of course, I'm not a person that say no more oil because it's necessary, but it's important to understand what happened with the plastic because it's not easy to say there's going to be plastic. This is a very important economic sector in the world. If you have the oil, you can produce plastic. At the end, this is economic problem. No, it's an environmental problem, but if you look, it's an economic situation, right? During the transport, you have this kind of accident, oil spills. Most of the oil spills that you have are related with raw material that is moving from refinery and then go to the ocean or something similar like this. This is before become plastic, before, right? Then you have the production, and this part is really bad because you start to combine the plastic or generate the plastic with a lot of chemicals, and this is the worst part of the situation because, for example, the additives, right? They are necessary, but they are too dangerous, right? And they are necessary because they decrease the cost production of the plastic in this moment. The refinery, yes, in theory, using less waste, but they can generate a lot of materials for the environment, for the atmosphere, etc., etc. And in the case of distribution, you can have accident like the Moby-Duck ship with a lot of plastic ducks go to the ocean, and you have the problem, and suddenly you have a lot of these ducks floating in the ocean. For science, this is really good because they can understand what happened with the ocean current and etc. But it's not a good way to understand the ocean circulation because it's not necessary to use plastic. In theory, it's the cleanest part, but it's not clean if you have this kind of accident, right? And then the use. And this is very important. Why? Because plastic is really new. It's really new, right? And the growing of plastic production and use growing in an exponential way, right? And this is very hard to stop because all projections have this trend, because despite you make campaigns, despite you say no more plastic, the people need the plastic and it's necessary to use the plastic in some stuff. And in some countries, this is more complicated because, for example, in Colombia, not all the people have the money to, for example, buy a cleaner bottle, 2 liters, 3 liters, right? And in this in these kind of countries, the solution is more simple. Make small bottles, yeah, and you convert one, for example, 5 liters bottles, and I don't know, maybe 10, and 10 is hard to manage than that one. It's really complicated. If you go to a remote beach, you can find a lot of small bottles of cleaning, and that is not a good solution. That is the reason why we need more plastic in this moment, right? And this plastic is used for packaging, construction, textile, consumer product, transportation, electrical, industrial, etc., etc. Is in our lives. It's really complicated. And this is very important because when you buy plastic bottles, think about you need a lot of time to dissolve, right? 8 of 10 bottles never are recycled, never, right? 24 million liters of oil are needed to produce plastic bottles every day, every year, yeah? And when you take a look, bottling water and shipping tractor is less energy efficient method to water supply. We are changing water for plastics. I think it's not a smart idea, okay? Okay, my friend, here begins, you have a big problem, right? But most of the people think about the disposal like the big problem, but the idea of the previous is try to explain that all the processing is really, really bad. These are the numbers, yeah? If you take a look, this is the amount of plastic that they recycled, incinerated, and discarded. This depends on the country, right? Because, for example, in Colombia, this number is really, really low. Most of plastic is incinerated and discarded, go to the landfill, right? And when you have this, you have a big problem. Why? Because this percentage go to landfills, this one go directly to the environment, and this change depends on the country. The other one go to the atmosphere. And this is a big issue. This number, or these numbers, can change. It depends on the country, right? I don't know what happened here in the US or what happened in Sweden. But for example, here in Colombia, I think these numbers are very similar. Maybe this is a little bit higher than that one. Because, for example, it's a very typical, it's a really, really bad behavior. And in the Caribbean houses, when you have a heavy rain, the people took the can with the trash, go to the street, and the water flowing to the ocean. This is the way that some people clean the house during heavy rains. This is strange, but it's normal. You can see beds, plastic, whatever you want in that area. It's really, really a big mess, right? I want to show you the problem that we have in our coastline, right? With some example, beaches, etc., etc. This is what happened in beaches. All this is plastic. All this is plastic, right? They try to make these trams in order to catch the plastic, but it's really, really a lot of plastic that is impossible to catch all. Maybe you have a recovery of 40%, no more. All the rest go to the ocean, right? When you can see this, the most of the litter items that you have with are plastic, 90%, right? You have the steel, paper, processed wood, metal, glass, some biohazards, right? Fish apparel, etc., etc. If you take a look, according to the beach typology or the coastal site typology, the most of these are found in remote and rural sites. In urban and resort and village, where you can find people, the people clean the coastal side, and in theory, it's better, right? But this is a big problem because always you have a plastic bank in remote and rural beach, right? This plastic move, accumulate here, and maybe the people clean these beaches, but then the plastic move from remote to rural or village place, and this is very, very common. What are the densities that you have in some beaches? For example, this one. If you use the towel, this is the number that you have. 16 items. That is a lot of items that you have in a coastal site. it's very important to understand the density and the typologies, because if you understand the typologies that you have, maybe you can try to attack the problem, right? For example, it's not about plastic, but it's about litter. In Chile, it's very common to find cigarette butts on the beach. If you know that the most important item is cigarette butts, okay, you can do some legislation to try to ban the cigarette on the beach. Easy to solve and no more. And in theory, you are working to download the or to decrease the amount of litter that you have. In our case, the most important is plastic, and all these typologies are single-use plastics. The people use during 10, maybe 1 hour the plastic, and then go outside and you have a big problem. Important, if you try to do this kind of analysis, you can take the OSPAR methodology, you can find maybe 100 typologies. In the Caribbean coastline, we have 43 in the beach area. But if you go to Iceland, you can find more typologies because it's very common. We did this kind of maps in order to show what happened with the densities, yeah, in terms of all litter, plastics, and these ones are some index that we use to try to show the problem related with that. The green coast try to say, okay, how clean you can see the beach, right? This index was created in Israel for a professor, but it's a good approach, but they have a problem. They use this index for urban and resort beach, and they don't have the amount of litter that we have in the Caribbean coastline. We need to update, because when we use this index, our beaches are clean and they are full of plastic. This is a mistake, and we did that update, and now we are a new clean coast index. And this one is an index that we create in order to try to show how many plastic do you have in a beach in terms of abundance. And you can see all these beaches are full of plastics, right? And in this case, you have a big problem. The idea is try to keep these circles in yellow or green. In the worst case, in this one. But as you can see, we have a strong colors in that area, right? This is our sample, an Iceland, because the most of the people say, okay, we have a plastic issue, we have a little problem, but it's direct influence of the people. Nobody living in this island. It's a really beautiful area created after a mud volcano. Mud volcano elevate, give the room for coral invasion. They have coral there, and it's a island in the middle of the Caribbean coastline, right? When you go to this island, you find this. Yeah, full of plastics, and this is a big problem that we have. You can see this picture. That one, hospitality use plastic for hospitals. We even found bags with blood. No idea. Yeah, and worse, these bags have some animals rafting. It's a double problem because it's blood in a bag with a rafting problem in this area. Bottles and more typologies. So what happened here? We have this number of typologies, the origin, right? And if we try to find a solution about this, we use the clean coast and the hazard item index. This is a hazard that we have to try to understand how many hazard hinders you have in a beach. And then you can compare this and try to say, okay, this beach is okay, try to protect. This beach have a problem, maybe a clean can work. And in some case, the situation is too extreme that maybe you need to think about restoration, because the problem is all the time. And you have these one problems that very typical: ingestion, entanglement, habitat damage, not a deep species. That is something that we found, for example, here. This is a plastic buoy full of Pernavirides. This is an Indo-Pacific mussel that arrives to Colombia, and the litter plastic is maybe the vector that helped to move this. We need to know if this is a primary invasion or a secondary spread, because no idea what happened here. Well, the theory is they came from Venezuela, and arrived to the Caribbean, and then litter helped to move along all the Caribbean coastline. This is one of the theories that we have. But it's not only permeabilities. We also have bryozoa tubes, etc., etc. It's very common to find this. After extreme waves event, it's very, very common. And then we have the microplastic problem, because if you have plastic, you have microplastic, that's very common here. And we did two works. The first one is in order to understand what happened with the microplastic on the beach, because it's the first one for this area. And the second one is in order to know if the sediment properties have some relationship with the plastic accumulation on the beaches. And this is the density that we found in this area. The most common item is fibers. It's very common. Fragment foam pellets is typical here. And you have some examples in different areas that we have. Fibers is very common, and the origin are the rivers. We did the same with the maps in order to show what happened. Yes, the idea is to keep yellow and green. You can see some parts in these areas in terms of density. And they are very important or necessary index to try to explain how much pollution do you have, and what is the environmental status that you have according to pollution. This is a little bit complicated because they use all the information about the microplastic or the plastics, right? You can use for microplastic or for microplastic or plastic in other sizes in order to know, according to the amounts, how is the environmental quality of the area using the amount of plastic that you found in that area, right? Because you cannot compare sites, okay? I can compare, for example, the Florida beach with the Caribbean coastline because it's a completely different environment, right? I can see the densities, but in terms of environmental condition, I need to know if something is different here because you have different factors in order to know what happened in this area, right? And this is the maps that you have for each of the typologies of plastic that you found here. And then what happened with the sediment? Is there any relationship between sediments and microplastics? For do that, we did the first approximation, yeah. And in theory, maybe the fragment can be related with the sorting of the sediments, but we need to take more and more samples of sediments along the year in order to know if there are a strong correlation between this one. But for the first approach, at least something indicate that fragments and sorting can be related. And this is why, because as you know, you can find two types of microplastic, the primary one and the secondary one, right? The primary is all the rock plastic that arrive to the coastline from rivers. The typical one is this one. Our t-shirts or our clothes, leave the fibers and go after laundry and go to the beach. This is the most typical one. But the other one is the secondary one. That is generated when you have an environment full of plastic and the plastic start to fragment for waves, wind, etc., and create this. And according to our information, there are some relation between fragments and the selection of the area. But as I said before, we need more samples to conclude something better about this. And what happened with this? Where they come from? The buoyancy is very important property. And in a tropical country like Colombia, with a lot of basins and with a lot of basin with a human intervention, all this plastic move and then accumulate, and some plastic go offshore. It's very important to start to study what happened offshore, because we still need more information about that. For example, if you have a lot of plastics and microplastics on the beach, you must expect more and more plastic offshore, right? And what happened here? You have dumping activities on the coastline over the basins, some activities that are developed over the beach. If you can, it's really sad because when you go the weekend for a normal beach, you can see the Sunday afternoon when all the people live covered with plastic. It's a very common situation, right? But this is not a common in all the beaches. It's very important to differentiate because, for example, in remote and urban and rural beach, is not a common denominator, but in urban beach is normal, right? The other one is the medical sanitary activities. We have a lot of this in this area. smoking related activities is very small amount, and the ocean and waterway is also a small one. And this is happens. You have the Magdalena River basin, that's the most important of the country, right? And the river is in Barranquilla, and this move that. And then you have a small basin, Mallorquin and Caribbean basin, that also are giving you plastic of the related with the bad management and littering practice doing around the basin. Then some of this plastic move offshore, and this is the ocean current that we have. It's very interesting because sometimes you can find Colombian litter in Panama or Costa Rica because they are moving. This is very common in a lot of countries, right? But in a local point of view, this is the behavior that have the longshore current. They move from this area and then move from southwest. It's very common. Then you have, this is a very typical process, right? Heavy rain, litter, driftwood, very common. This is a usual touristic big shop, the Atlantic department, so during a weekend after a heavy rain. Or you have the withdrawal, that is when the litter start to move to the ocean, thanks to current or something similar, right? Okay, it's time to the most complicated part of the presentation, because in some point when we are on the field, we believe that is we cover all the aspects of the plastic problem, okay? The beach, the mangroves and dunes, in Iceland, microplastic, macroplastic, etc. But suddenly we found this. You know, they are rocks made by plastics. How simple. You have plastic, and you can see we have a lot of microplastic and plastic in this coastal environment. The plastic accumulate, and this plastic start to melt. Yes, because we are in the Caribbean, we have a good condition for melting. And they serve like cement for the grain of sands. And you find these kind of rocks that they are not using calcium carbonate or silice to do the cement. In this case, they are using the plastic, right? This is very important because not all are rocks, right? And in a few minutes, I will try to explain how we try to divide this one. But you can see this. This is a same sample. You can see the plastic, you can see the sand, and you can see the thin section of the plastic, and the chemical spectrum about this. Okay, we have a problem here because this is new. What we call this? You form some pollution, new rocks, no idea, right? Important. This is only a suggestion that we have. Right? This is not gospel. This is not definitive. It's only a proposal that we have because in some point we need to start to work with this and try to organize what happened, right? And we need to think about the plastic cycle, because now you have another step in this cycle. You have the extraction, the transport, the production, the use, the discard. At this point, this is the normal plastic cycle, but then you have movement, degradation, fragmentation, accumulation, and rock formation. Four stigmas in the cycle, right? And this is a new version of the plastic cycle in order to try to explain what's happened about this. Last year, we did this paper with the Professor Alan Williams. Professor Alan Williams is the person that made the connection between Steve and I, and the Professor William Deal in Allendale in Michigan, in order to give a little bit of organization about this, right? And we defined this plastic geological cycle, like a log cycle, in order to explain what happened with this kind of pollutant substance that we have. And we need to understand what are the physical processes that control this. In this case, you have currents, you have wind, etc., accumulate, transporting plastic, and this is the process. Plastic go to the environment, exposed to UV, yes, they start to breaking, transport, the weathering make the job, you have microplastic, then they accumulate, and in some point, if you have something something that help to make the microbial work, they can decompose, but then they can generate a new forms or rocks, right? And you have examples in Brazil, in US, Hawaii, in India, and Colombia. The most of the times, the people call these plastic agglomerates, right? Because it's the equivalent to a conglomerate. And the typical example is this one. And you can see maybe all of this can be called plastic agglomerate, but this is not, looks like a conglomerate. They look like a sandstone or something similar. And this is the reason why we start to try to create a new lexicon for this kind of new forms of pollution or rocks, etc., whatever you want to call it, right? And there are some definitions. The first one, these three terms, right? It's very common in this moment. Do you believe in the Anthropocene? No, I don't believe. I believe it's real, not real. Okay. If you ask me, I should try to go some steps. I believe in the Anthropocene, right? It's clear the human dominance, the human footprint along the earth. But in this moment, I don't agree with the time they use to define the Anthropocene. Because for me, the Anthropocene begins a few years ago, maybe during the industrial time. For me, this is the beginning of the Anthropocene. In fact, I believe that the Anthropocene can be divided in three stages. The Anthropocene, the lower part, the middle part, and the Plasticene. For me, the last one is clear, the Plasticene. Why? Because the plastic is leaving a real mark on the planet Earth, right? But it's important. The Tectocene and Capitalocene are more related with human science, right? But they are the main division or main difference between one. The Anthropocene center of the comprehensive spectrum of human activities, the Capitalocene, the economic infrastructure, human action, emphasis in this kind of way to be like society. And the Tectocene is how the society has transformed the technology along the world, right? And we propose this. Okay, why not? If you have this kind of formation for rocks, why not? Yeah, if they have similar characteristics, you call these rocks. This was published. Until now, we don't have a replica. That is good. And we have, for example, plastic with rock fragments is equivalent to, for example, plastic breccia, plastic agglomerate, quartz, plastic sandstone, etc., etc. When you have plants or charcoal, peat, plastic need, plastic coal, when you have shells of coral, anthropoceans, plastic calcarenite, plastic shark, yes, plastic elite, etc., etc. Some of these definitions were published before for some authors in different parts of the world. For example, this one is a term made for some researchers in Brazil, because they are the people that found the first evidence of the plastic with shells in a coastal area in Brazil, right? But it's very common, and this is the proposal that we have. Are the rocks, and these are the forms of altered plastics, because you have pyroplastics. That's very common, right? Because the bees make some fires, and the plastic burn and start to combine with the sand. The plastic roots is very common in areas when you have porosity in the rocks, and the microplastic go inside the pore and start to melting inside this, and you find the plastic inside the pore. You have biofolded plastic when you have for example, a shell or something similar that they start to interact with the plastic. The plastic tar, when you have the tar and the plastic inside the rock using the porosity, and the plastic clad that is a weight of weathering that have the plastic on some stage of the plastic, right? Also, you have the technofossils, right? And the urban fossils. These ones are very easy to identify because it's something that you have technology. For example, if you find a piece of computer inside of these soils, you can find this. And in this case, the urban fossils are showing what happened in some area after a building or some construction. They are using for people that work in anthropology because they can understand what happened in this area according to this. In fact, if you found plastic, yes, and you make a chemical analysis of the plastic, you can know what is the age, because each polymer have years of creation. Yeah, and sometimes some have 30 years, 40 years, etc. And you can dating this kind of fossil if you want. And then you have the soils. They are really easy to differentiate because you have the anthrosols when no plastic is involved. This is very common in our country. Believe it or not, the people use litter, trash in order to create new soils and build new houses inside. It's in the upper part, it's very common practice. And the other one is when you have plastics accumulate. The difference between one another is most of the time this is man-made, both are man-made, but in this case it's a man or person that fill an area with litter, and in this case it's a soil that formed when litter came there, right? This is maybe the big difference between one. Okay, to finish, the management considerations. I show in a problem, right? And we are really, really good people showing the problems, but I believe we need to try to show some solution, not the definitive, but some idea about the solution, right? And we did these two papers, the past, present, and future plastic pollution, and this one, in order to try to explain what are the solution that we have. It's important to understand the plastic use is in our life, and it's like a reflex, right? And it's really hard to leave a reflex. No idea, but we can use different alternatives. The first one is the removal, right? But I say before, maybe this can be a little bit frustrating because you clean and clean and clean, but you can see no progress about this. But it's important to know, prevent, mitigate, and try to change the behavior, right? Know what's happening is very important because, as I said before, if you know your enemy, you know how to attack it. Yeah? If you know the plastic bags are the problem, try to attack how the plastic bags are used. In some countries don't work this, but maybe you did a progress. I speak with my friends now in the dinner, in the lunchtime about what happened now in Colombia. Plastic bags are forbidden in the market, right? If you want a bag, you need to pay. This is a good solution. But in the fruit section, you still have bags. And now the people are using the bags, the fruit section, for the big market. That is the solution exists, but this is now a change of behavior of the people. But it's something to start. This is very important to know. To prevent, okay, how we can do to prevent litter enter to the marine environment. Reduction of plastic input, improvement in product design, etc. Days before I'm see on TV, I don't remember the profession of this woman, but she say, if you see in natural environment, all works in a circular way, right? A leaf falls, and then they have some mission or they have some different use. The plastic is not the same. In that sense, it's a mistake in the design. The plastic have a mistake in the design because the idea is to circulate the plastic, but this is not happening now. And this is very important. The product design is a very, very important place or very important stage in order to try to solve the problem. If you are smart during the product design, maybe you can mitigate or you can solve the plastic issue. Then the mitigation, yeah, how you can reduce the plastic, yeah, so revision, adaptation, prioritization of some activities made for humans. Each country is different. No one solution fits for all. That is very important because some people believe, okay, in the US, they apply this. This we work in Colombia. No, impossible. Yeah. In Sweden, you pay for one Coca-Cola, I don't know, 2 corons, right? One is the real price, one is the tax. When you finish, you put the plastic bottle in the path matching is the name in Swedish, sorry for my Swedish, and you have to one current pack. It's a good alternative. Maybe in a Nordic country you can use that, but in Colombia you can use that because maybe the people live to no more this beverage, and the people say, okay, no more. We broke in the industry and you have an economic problem. Yeah, I said before, this is an economic matter, and this is thing about this. All is about economic, right? And the other is try to change the behavior of the people. This is a more complicated situation. You can try to, I think the best solution is environmental education from the beginning, for the kids, right? The kids are the future. If you start to speak about this kind of issue for our kids, they can understand what happened, etc., and etc. Maybe our person no, but for our kids, yes. But in other place, you can be a little bit strong with a prohibitive measure. You are found put plastic in the street, you have a big ban, or you go to the jail. I don't know. Yeah. The idea is to change the behavior. How? No idea. Each country needs to take the current decision about that. If you try to do that, maybe we can solve the plastic issue that I try to show is a big issue not only in Colombia, it's the rest of the world. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for my English, but I hope you understand me. No idea if you have questions.
Question is, plastic rocks are new to me. That's fascinating. My question is can plastic conglomerate or plastic rocks, do they form only in tropical warm water environments, or can they form in cold water environments as well?
It's a good question. For now, I only can reply that all the studies are limited for tropics areas. All the sites when we found these kind of rocks are in tropical areas. In that sense, the weathering process and the temperature are, I think, at the key point for the formation. We have evidence of other things of pollution related to rocks outside the tropics, but they are not rocks. They are completely different. And in fact, our rocks are the first case when you have plastic serving as cement for sand, because all these rocks were called plastic agglomerates because they work like plastic agglomerates. But in our case, we did a thin section in order to see how many plastic do you have and how many sand do you have here.
Yeah, I said water is what I really meant was,
Yeah.
tropical versus temperate and
Yeah.
cold regions and period.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's fascinating. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So from my understanding, the Anthropocene concept is more of a recently officially accepted geological timescale situation. But there was a lot of back and forth and debate about that, particularly about the use of plastics as a marker, because I don't know, some people thought it was not continuous enough. So what was it that kind of pushed that tipping point to there being, okay, a consensus that the Anthropocene is a thing and that plastics are a good marker for that? Is it the rocks or?
How many times you can expect that find the plastic? I don't know if this is not the way to try to explain this for something in the quaternary science congress, but for example, if you have the chance to travel to the future, do you believe you can find plastics? Yeah, in that sense, maybe it can serve like an indicator. We as geologists think in big about years. Maybe we need to start to change our way to think about, because human really marked with this kind of actions. And okay, it's a big scale, but the change made by humans and really fast. Yeah. For example, how many times do you need for create a dunes in a coastal area? Years, million years, centuries. How many times a person can't take a dig and leave the dunes? Days. maybe we need to change about this. Here, the most important, at the end, this is a semantic debate, right? For my point of view, I want to leave the message that we are create a really big mess, because when you found plastic cemented rocks, that is not good.
That happened fast.
Yeah,
Faster than.
yeah.
Yes, in the chat here, Kaya Powell asks, what's the most significant obstacle to bringing back plastic alternatives, especially in packaging?
The price. At the end, the principal problem that we have here is economic problem, right? Because it's cheap. And in some countries, you need to make this kind of things cheap. And it's really easy to, as geologists, I always say, yes, it's an environmental problem, but the solution is in the economics. Just to make simple the answer.
I have a question regarding, because I imagine you have studied different types of collection or type of processing to clean these plastics out of the water. What is in your, research, one of the best kind of examples of collection that exists right now?
For example, now is doing the ocean cleanup. It's a good way to try to collect the plastic in the ocean. But I liked a lot philosophy that I have with Alan Williams. I said, try to avoid the plastic reach the ocean. It's the best way, right? If you cannot stop the plastic production, maybe put this kind of tramps in the river basins, control it is okay. But the problem is the quantity of plastic that we are generate, because sometimes this is a quote that they say a lot of time. The capacity of management that we have is really low if we compare with the amount of plastic that we are creating or generating or producing or consuming every day, right? And this is a big problem. All alternatives are really good. The problem is apply the alternatives and also have the capacity to manage because in the ideal scenario, all works, but then you need to put in the reality, and each country is completely different about this.
A lot of people in the general public, a lot of people that are in our sphere think that, we're holding out for technology that's going to fix the problem for us. Do you think that this has led to complacency, like why people are so against just reducing the problem at its core, just not using?
No. I believe that we cannot make our responsibility in others. In this case, this is our responsibility, not the technology responsibility to solve the problem. It's your problem, you fix the problem, right? It's your bottle, you try to make this bottle go to recycling, or I don't know. Because sometimes we clean the hands when, okay, we have the technology, no problem. It's the same with for example, in Colombia or in some countries, you are eating something, I don't know, potato chips. And the people go to the street and just, hey, what happened with you? Something will pick up with that. Why? I pay for that, my bill, the water or something similar. I don't know what happened here, but in Colombia, you pay this in the water bill. Come on, man. No, it's not my responsibility. I pay for this. How to change this way to think for a person? It's really complicated. In that sense, I believe it's better if you try to solve the problem and not leave this to technologies or technology developments, because the people in some point will be really lazy about the problem and no more, something will do the job for me. It's okay. Yeah.
But don't you think that the companies that are manufacturing this product that is really hard to get rid of and it's hard for an individual, like you're saying, like if you think you're recycling it and then it doesn't go there, don't you think those companies bear some responsibility
of course,
well in terms of fixing the problem? Because if you just put on individuals, I don't know.
At the end, we did in the first paper that we did about the management was about the consumer point of view, right? the paper is about litter management, etc., etc. We did the paper, and next week we say, okay, this is good, but the fault is not the consumer. The companies have a big responsibility here. We need to change for the responsibility, or we need to highlight this for the companies. And then we did the paper about the plastic management, about from the production point of view. It's a shared responsibility. Of course, the consumer, right, have a big responsibility, but at the end, the big problem is about who is making the plastic, the companies that make the plastic. The question is, how you change that when some countries living for that? Right? It's really complicated. It's an economic issue, right? We have oil in Colombia. Yeah, the oil is not for the cars. That part of the oil is go to the petrochemical industry, and we have some production. We are not very important in plastic production in the world, right? But how you live or tell a country, okay, no more production of oil. You don't have more than 10% of the gross product. You said at the end, it's an economic problem. That is the reason why this is really hard to. And it's really funny because the companies that more create the problem, they say are the companies that sponsor some congress about litter problems, plastic issue. Coca-Cola is really good sponsor about this kind of situation, but the Coca-Cola is. Think about the Coca-Cola. Why we are using plastic bottle and not glass bottles? Why?
Cheaper for them to move.
No, it's cheaper. Yeah, at the end, the people is a business. If you want to buy a Coca-Cola, if you have a Coca-Cola $1 and you have other beverage $2, what is better? No matter. This is better because it's cheaper. Yeah. At the end, in some countries, in the most of the country, the people don't believe or don't buy the things, thinking if they are good, they are healthy, they are good for the environment. They are buying this because they are cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, it's cheaper in the short term for the consumer, but
Yeah.
like it's got a pretty high cost associated in terms of removal and dealing with it.
Yeah.
For all of us.
All of us, yes.
It becomes a question of like
But that is,
companies being allowed to export that cost
Yes.
onto like future generations and onto the rest of people.
yeah, but this works in a first world country, not in a country like Colombia,
Yeah, I mean,
because we need we don't have enough money. And for example, if you want to go to the supermarket, you have a very limited money, right? And you need to buy the cheapest things in order to supply the demand for a family. At the end, it's economic situation, and these kind of countries are really good for this kind of industry because they have the bases in that area and they have more profit in these seats in this site. Because, for example, I don't like to speak about brands, right? But for example, the soda brands in our country are really cheap, really cheap. And the people are, it's very important because you can find in Colombia all fruit that you want. You only need a blender, no more, because you take a fruit, make a juice, and it's very healthy, it's better for you, etc. But the most of the people prefer to drink Coca-Cola. Oh, say the brand, sorry. And, this is normal because in this kind of countries it's like an addiction, right? And people need to consume these kind of items. It's really complicated situation. Sorry for being a pessimistic person, but I try to say the truth.
It's the nature of.
Thank you for a great presentation.
My
My
pleasure.
question is, how much is this problem?
Yeah.
For example, Colombia.
Yeah.
Do you find plastic in your water from produced from other countries, right? Is it possible?
Sorry, again?
Plastic that you see in the Colombian water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it all from Colombia or not? When they produce from other countries?
Or country, yes.
Because we have this
But-
international.
Yeah.
waters, one big patches.
Yeah,
right?
of course. No, but in the case of Colombia, we can say maybe the most of the plastic is Colombian because, for example, when I went to the field trip, I still can find the brands of the plastic. In fact, we have a very particular situation in Colombia. I will put an example. Each department, the department is equivalent to Florida, Georgia, etc. Each department has their own room, the liquor brand, right? You can see that in each department only that room is sold. You can find the room of the other department. And you can see in the Atlantico coastline rooms from Bogota, from Medellin, from the other place, right? And in that sense, you can see, okay, we have plastic bottle of rum because it's cheaper, right? Of these departments. We cannot find bottles of other area or something similar. We can find some example, but the most of the plastic that we found is the same Colombia. Yeah. Because the circulation pattern is very easy to, it's not like the Black Sea. Okay, because for example, in the Black Sea, you have a very limited basin and each country have their own language, right? And some of the countries are not friends, right? And they don't have a economic business. And you can see bottles moving in this direction. Turkish bottles in Bulgaria or something similar. It's more easy, but in Colombia, the most of the plastic is created in the same Colombia.
I like to think that people want to be good and do good for the environment,
Yeah.
right? And I observed the plastic straw movement, right? To
Yeah.
go from plastic straws to paper straws.
Yeah.
And that being a single-use plastic.
Yeah.
Would you like to see a different poster child for single-use plastic besides the straws, or are you happy with the paper straw movement?
All the solution are welcome for me. I don't have problem about that because we have a problem with the solution. All are welcome. Yeah. Like in my case, I only try to show the solution not in a pessimistic way, but it's in a realistic way. All can work. For example, when I speak about cleaning operation, it's good, it's nice, it's a good moment to start to working with some friends, but back to reality is not working, but it's a good solution. It's a solution to do, right? Just for create the conscience to the people is a clean area or looks nice, right? In that sense, all the movements that you have or you propose or you can find, all that's good because all are trying to give some kind of solution for this problem. Perfect for me. I don't have any kind of problem. All are welcome. All are welcome.
I know your expertise is in the ocean area, but I was wondering if you could tell us more about the plastic affecting the atmosphere with burning them. I spent some time in India and they didn't have great waste management and they would just burn all of the garbage.
I never have a work in this area because in fact, I'm not an expert in plastic issues. In theory, I working in coastal erosion and coastal evolution, something similar. I started working in plastic and I cannot leave the problem because every moment I found something new, right? But I never have the chance to working with plastic in the atmosphere, but it's a big problem in countries like India. I don't know, in Colombia, we have that problem, but we never make measure of, I don't know, the first study about plastic in the atmosphere in Colombia. Is the first, I don't have idea about this kind. It's a topic to explore. I hope something here, Travel to Colombia helps about this because we need money to start this kind of research related to plastic in the atmosphere.
Great work, thanks.
Thank you.
So you mentioned rocks and soil made of plastic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where do you find them? Are they also occurred in the inland? So our around the country are only occurred around the coastal zone.
In my case, I only work in the coastline. I don't have the chance to work inland, but I did this presentation 3 weeks ago in the Colombian Geological Congress. They invited me to make the presentation. I said, okay, I usually like to go to Colombian Congress. And I did this presentation and some people from Bogota tell me about the soils. not the rocks. They found some similarities between the soil that I explained in the coastline and some soil that they found in Bogota, in some new areas, the new construction. Like I said to the professor, in this case, it's more common to find rocks close to the coastline because I believe they are the perfect condition to try to create or to give this kind of formation. It's the environmental condition perfect about that. Also because I have the chance to read a lot about this kind of papers, and all the papers are from coastline. I only know one paper when they report this kind of rocks in China, but it's inland. No, it's the only one I know. The rest of the paper are made in coastline. We will see what happens. This is a baby topic. Yeah, this is only 2 years and still we have a lot of work to do about.
Yes, this is also goes to the landfill.
Yeah.
That may also be.
Yeah, it's time we start to try to arrange, to organize this kind of rocks. We will see what happens in the future. Some people will say, okay, this is not to work, this is not good, we need to reevaluate this, but it's okay. The idea is to start to show that now plastic is working like a cement to create this kind of rocks or new forms of pollution, or whatever you want to call this. Question?
The cement that holds the rocks together, it's plastic?
Yeah, all the cement.
So it doesn't get a carbonate or anything?
No. All is plastic. All
So
is plastic.
they're low density.
Yeah. It's interesting because we need to. It's the first time that we found this kind of rocks or pollution. We try to find similars in other parts because most of them are plastic agglomerate, and the plastic agglomerate I think is more easy to create because you have plastic, right? And you have a small piece of rocks, and you have this new formation. But in this case, you have a layer. Yeah, because this was found in an outcrop in Colombia.
Okay.
Yeah, the outcrop is from this size for this size.
And is there any rock fragments incorporated into it?
Yes,
Yeah.
small piece. In fact, I don't go beyond this, but we did because we're working with other geologists, and we did the stratigraphic column of this one. We have tertiary rocks from the Oligocene, then we have corals in light position, very typical from Colombia, and in the upper part we found this kind of rocks. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We need
Maybe
to.
you could get rid of the plastic by incorporating it into
Yeah.
the lithosphere.
No, but in this case, I believe we believe that the process. When you have this kind of environment and you have a lot of plastic, if the plastic accumulate, if you have the chance to visit a beach in Colombia, in some parts you can find plastic in all the beach, right? This plastic can go side in the top of a small cliff or something similar and start to. No, and then you have the opportunity with the weather and start to melt the plastic, and if you combine with sand, you have the rock. It's a different process. It's a new process to try to understand. In fact, we want to go beyond and try to make this in experiment in the laboratory in order to, because it's necessary to try to explain this. We will see what happens in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question, going back to what you spoke about earlier. You mentioned that at its core, this is an economic problem.
Yeah.
Not more than an environmental problem.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you knew of any cases where it's being handled similarly to other challenges that we're facing, like with respect to like the energy sector and how they're, like, a lot of times big petroleum companies have to pay this tax or an offset in order to continue to produce these kind of harmful products, you know, kind of like what she mentioned earlier. I wanted to know if you knew if there was any case of that happening with plastic companies, like does Coca-Cola have to pay, I don't know, a tax or some kind of additional, you know,
Yeah,
something to
understand.
offset the production?
Well, I want to say that in that point, I cannot access all the information about this. I describe the problem, I try to understand what happened, and this is the next step that I need to do to try to understand what is the best solution, what are the company doing about that. The best answer that I have for this is no idea. Yeah, no idea, because my days only have 25 hours and I need to sleep, and this is a lot of information. Yeah, and it's for me sometimes it's impossible to cover all the spectrum because we have too many subfields to understand here, and that point is more related with the economic aspect, and is out of my field expertise, because I'm not an expert, but it's really outside of my field. In these cases, I always say the same. You have the information here, try to explain me what happened in other place if you have any kind of information about this, because in this point, I am completely a black sheet without information about, because it's outside my expertise or my information. Sorry.
No, thank you for articulating.
Yeah.
So comment on that, there's some states working on legislation to try to create these kind of extended or expanded producer responsibility kind of schemes so that big companies like Coca-Cola would pay some kind of tax or some kind of money that goes towards the recovery of the trash, or like to facilitate, mostly focused on recycling. It's an excellent point to bring up that recycling is not an infinite thing for plastic though, so. But that's one kind of like regulatory thing that's being.
That's like relatively new is what you're saying.
Very.
I know it's like a thing with like energy companies, so I'm just curious, because it seems like ultimately, again, it's a financial incentive or disincentive. Yeah. Anything's gonna happen. Thank you.
But also to address in that direction, you're just gonna have to start reviewing how much money those companies pay for water.
Yeah.
For the right of water.
Yes.
Here in the United States, if you see how much Coca-Cola gives to the government of the United States for the rights of some of the water.
Yeah.
And you see, you know what? It's an economical problem.
Yes.
If they only have to pay $200 for just exploring that water, do you really think they care about where the plastic bottles go?
No. At the end, it's a business. Yeah. And they don't. Do you know greenwashing means? It's very common for this kind of industries. We sponsor this kind of congress about litter, plastic issue. Okay, we are clean with the environment. Also the people really, oh yeah, this working with the environment. It's not true. And she says something important. If you say how much money they pay for the water, you can see at the end they are no interest. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question more about Colombia.
Yeah.
Do we know that we have studies tracking the plastic roads in the Magdalena River?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in my case, but some people are studying that in this moment.
And you know if this plastic comes more from the cities or from the towns, or maybe you have an idea?
No, in this case, it's very common because I don't remember how many municipalities we have in this area of the Magdalena River, right? But we have big cities, they have problem with the litter management, and in other place, it's really a mess because the litter goes directly to the river. It's very common, right? And in a city like Barranquilla, I said before, when we have a heavy rain, the people go throw the plastic to the streets in order to liberate the plastic from the house.
And I was also thinking about maybe the Ciénaga Grande making a buffer between the coast and like having a role like a buffer with this plastic in the winter, maybe.
Yeah, but in this moment, the Ciénaga Grande de Santa Marta have a big problem with the plastic, and also, in fact, the Ciénaga Grande have a. Okay, I will show them up if you have the time, because I speak about the Ciénaga Grande, but most of the people maybe don't have idea where is the Ciénaga Grande. Let me put them up of Colombia.
This is winter, it's like one water body, the Magdalena and the Ciénaga Grande join, so all the plastic will
I hope the people in the Zoom meeting can see.
Yes, yes, I can.
That would be Satellite. Okay, it's okay. This is the Magdalena River, right? The river crosses all the country, and this is the final destination, the Magdalena. And he's speak about this area. So this is a very, in fact, I can do another presentation not about the litter problem. It's about the litter issue that you have in this area, because if you can see, this is part of the river, and here you have a road that communicate this area, right? This is a typical example of Barrier Island in front of a coastal lagoon, and just before the road, you have a lot of inlets here. In this moment, you only have one inlet, this one, no more. All is closed, right? And you have a big problem with the sedimentation in this area. This is full of plastic, microplastic, and you have a lot of people here that don't have minimal condition for litter management or water, etc. And at the end, this is an area with all the pollutants and arriving, and you have a big environmental problem here, right? And then you receive the plastic that came from the river and the plastic that came from the small city that you have here in this area. In this moment, there are many people working in this area of the Caribbean coastline about the plastic problem and the pollution problem, because it's very important. And also it's a natural park. And also have big problem with the coastal erosion. It's a unique area to make survey. But in this case, we are focused only in this part of the Caribbean coastline in this moment. We will see what happens in the future.
Can you see plastic from the Google map?
Sorry?
Can you see the plastic from the Google map? Can you zoom in?
No, but if you see a beach here, you can find it's really interesting, because I can bet you if I put one of the picture in here, you can see a lot of litter in this area. I live in here in this part of the city, and I don't go to the beach because it's full of plastics. And it's really funny because I moved here because I like the beach. I only see the beach from my backyard, but I don't go to the beach because it's fully polluted. I don't like it. Really sad.
I would like to interject that it is 4:23 p.m. I do have one question in the chat. Dr. Ross, would you like to take one more question, or?
Okay, we'll take your question.
Okay. Tanya Williams asks, have you carried out any studies in karst/limestone geologic systems like the Bahamas?
No. I don't have the pleasure to know Obama. If she wants to invite me, I don't have a problem. Okay, thank you. The presentation is here. If you need something, write me, ask for Steve, whatever you want.